Andy Dunne, good morning to you.
Good morning.
How are you getting on?
Very well,
Are you getting sort of excited now at this point? Because it feels like we've been talking about it for years, and actually we're nearly there now.
Yeah, I think tomorrow is it's a big moment in the lead up. Yeah, so getting a bit more real.
They're weird games, aren't they? Like it's almost like it doesn't matter about England. Forget about whatever they're doing, who they're playing, what their game plan is. Like, it's about combinations, it's about tactics, it's about getting through the bloody thing with no more injuries.
Yeah, it's a strange environment. It's like a necessary evil in the lead up to the World Cup. We have to do it because everybody's doing it. But I think for me, getting out unscathed and, a respectable loss wouldn't be a bad thing, not at all.
At some point, post that, because we obviously have another couple of big games after that.
Yeah.
At some point soon, like maybe the next game, we start to say, listen, you, and you, get out of here, and we'll see you in Japan.
Yeah, well, I think he's got to make a few calls, obviously, he will be a bit more definitive, I think, after this England game. It's an interesting choice that Eddie Jones went for. He's named his squad very early and just set a stall out. And I suppose the argument for that from Eddie Jones is that there's a clarity and a sense of purpose with that group now that are in there. They're not just fighting to get on the squad. They know they're going. There's reassurance that they're going, and they can really start to zero in on the World Cup. So I think Joe Schmidt was conceded that they're probably a little bit ahead of us in their prep, and that's by design for them. I think Ireland are happy enough to try and peak for 24th September, so they're delaying things a little bit, but that's Joe's approach for now, and it is.
He'll be a genius.
Exactly. Yeah.
Who's the backup to the backup at 10?
For me, I probably on raw talent, I would say Jack Carty is probably the next in line from Joey, but Ross Byrne has not really put a foot wrong for about a year and a half. Anything that's been asked of him, whether it's to start in big European games for Leinster, he's only one start for Ireland over in against the Italians. So it's an interesting one because from a systems point of view, he's probably a little less talented than Jack Carty, but probably a very good systems operator and very, very strong at bringing other players into the game. And probably suits Joe's coaching style, maybe that little bit more. He's less instinctive than Jack Carty, and he will do exactly what Joe wants, and that's obviously a plus in Joe's mind. So for me, in terms of pure talent, I would say Jack is the third best there, but I'm not sure would he actually get selected ahead of Ross. Yeah,
is that Byrne starting tomorrow? Is that we just take that as a clear indicator that he's ahead in the pecking order?
I would have thought so, because Jack only got that really a brief kind of bit of time against the Italians coming off the bench for Joey, and you would assume would then be next in line to start against England, but he's been leapfrogged, and it's it's as close to a full starting Irish team as we've seen, we could guess for. So I think for Ross to start, it's a pretty strong indicator. Yeah, he's leapfrogged Jack, I think.
Talk to us a little bit about the difference between the two of them, because like the stuff we've heard is that like one of them is a very instinct player in Carty versus the sort of euphemisms that you've already been using there in terms of Ross Byrne being that bit of a safer player and maybe more of a Joe Schmidt player. But what are the actual differences between Ross Byrne and Jack Carty?
Jack has probably a better running game. He's more of a threat himself. I think he's probably a little faster off the mark. So I think the interior defences probably have to keep an eye on him more. He does things like he chips over defences, he varies how he kicks, he will do what you mightn't expect at given times in terms of his choices, being instinctive, impulsive at times. He might do that from deep in his own half, and he'll be very much someone who'll take on a bit of risk, where Ross will do as is expected of him in terms of the team playing within the shape, playing within the pattern, and he doesn't really vary from that in terms of, say, making an instinctive or impulsive choice. He's a very, very good passer. He's very good execution of crossfield kicks. So, high crossfield kicks to wingers. He's very, he puts that ball on a sixpence a lot of the time, and an excellent goal kicker. He's probably I would say probably ahead. I'm not sure on the stats, is he ahead of Jack Carty on success rate with place kicking, but they are quite different players. Yeah, I think Ross's strength is being understated and bringing everyone else into the game very well, particularly at a high level. That's a huge strength because there's a lot of talent around you. Jack's talent, I think, is adding variation and unpredictability to our team game.
Yeah, the latter words is not going to sort of take a box with Joe Schmidt. That's
no,
sure.
It doesn't. Yeah. And I think that's probably why Ross has leapfrogged him for the England game. Yeah.
I don't think we've had you on since the Joey Carbery injury, and you're certainly not on AM anyway. Like, how worried are you about the situation? Like, given the fact that he's had to go under and to suffer a minor procedure, that's what they've said, and the fact that no matter what the situation is, it will be a rusty Joey Carbery, I dare say, going into the World Cup, or certainly an untested Joey Carbery when it comes to warm-up games now.
Well, it's a tricky one to work out. I suppose we've got to take them at face value. The mechanism of injury, typically if us three were out playing five-a-side, the most common injury is people roll their ankle on the outside and they get a big sprain and swells up. That's the their ligament complex on the outside of the ankle. Then there's a very small one in between the ankle bones, and then there's one on the inside of the ankle. And the way it happened with Joey in the Italian game, half the Italian forward pack fell from the outside in onto Joey's ankle, which would suggest the injury's on the inside part of his ankle. And from with a physio hat on, that's called the deltoid ligament, which is an umbrella term for three ligaments that are joined together. So it's the strongest ankle ligament we have. So to injure it, it's probably the best one to injure. Right. And I was surprised when I heard about the surgical procedure, even though, albeit minor. I suspect, you know, along the lines of almost cosmetic, that it was something to try and stabilise it further to make sure he's right for the World Cup. You know, he obviously looked a bit upset coming off the field, but everything I've heard since is that it's actually not that bad an injury. So you know, he'll probably be a little rusty going into the World Cup, but I suspect he'll be coming right around week one of the World Cup, and then they're going to go with him obviously for the World Cup for his versatility and his talent. I think he'll get away with it in terms of being rusty too. Yeah,
because Schmidt's been talking about that. He said even 9 is an option when it comes to Joey Carbery, let alone 15 and 12, as has been mentioned, I think, by Shane Horgan.
Yeah, I'd love to hear Joe Schmidt mention it as well. I think Shane, it's a very interesting thing Shane Horgan mentioned. I think Joey, I mean, most people when they watch him are a big fan of how he plays. He's not typical in terms of what we see on the rugby field. He glides around. Most guys look kind of heavy set and they've been built in a gym, and
very fluent.
He's just a fluent type of mover. He's a joy to watch. Even in that Italian game, I think he's also learned to be a company man in terms of what Joe would like. He runs those systems very well, and then does allow, or has earned the right to be expressive through his talent and ability, and he's struck a lovely balance in that now, and that came with a bit of maturity from his year with Munster and getting regular game time. I think that was a very smart move by Schmidt and by Carbery, and I know it annoyed a lot of the Leinster management, but ultimately I think it's helped Joey's game. So I would hope we take it at face value. It isn't that serious an ankle injury. I don't think there's any elaborate cover-up. I think he's and again, the minor surgical procedure, I would hope to just strengthen that already strong ligament that we've got on the inside of that ankle, and hopefully he recovers well.
Don't want to be kicking the man when he's down, obviously, in terms of the injury, but on the basis that that is the case and he is going to start, what are the shortcomings in Joey Carbery's game? Because we tend to talk a lot about him, his prodigious nature, the like you say, sort of the Jack Carty-isms, but he's reined himself in to be a Joe Schmidt player. But if I'm targeting him from an opposition point of view, where is he weak?
He doesn't really have any glaring weaknesses in his game. For me, it's more the choices, the selections he makes. So, for example, and I think Johnny Wilkinson is to blame for this. He changed the template for out half play by being so physical. And you know, if you look at Tom Brady playing for the Patriots, if anyone comes near him, he just collapses on the floor in a bid to protect himself. And you can't quite do that. It doesn't transfer straight into rugby. But there's absolutely a way for an a young out half, to protect yourself and to learn how to avoid danger. And I think he probably doesn't avoid danger enough. I don't think there's any. There was a few queries on has he got the physical resilience to play international rugby. Now, he absolutely does. He's a physically very strong guy, but he's getting into situations he ought not to be in my view. And I think again, Johnny Wilkinson, Johnny Sexton, Owen Farrell, they love it and they get stuck in all day long, and that's the nature they've got. But they're kind of ruining it for everyone else. all the other out halves of the world who should be wearing a pink vest in training. You know, I think Joey just needs to find that little bit of a balance, and I think to avoid the really unnecessarily physical challenges, for example, the Italian injury, he could absolutely have stood back and let someone else go into that angle and remained in his position. You could have escorted someone into that position. And I think as you get older as an out half and you have more influence, your teammates, your coaching staff, everyone wants you on the field to run the game. And particularly under the Joe Schmidt system, it's not like they dilute responsibility. It's like the number 10 runs our game. So they want you on the field for 80 minutes. So I think you'd probably be given a bit of license to do that at times. If it's avoiding a bit of physical contact or getting out of the firing line in defence, then that's a smart move. So that's where I think he needs to evolve in his game. But in terms of any other aspect of his game, his tackling, his footwork, his passing, his goal kicking, his kicking out of hand, his variation, he's elusive. He's got it all. He's top quality.
You mentioned the Shane Horgan comments on the sort of England route of getting Furlong forward on the pitch at the same time. New Zealand have done it obviously more recently with Munga and Barrett. Have we missed a trick now? Should we not have been over the last couple of years spotting this trend and trying to get Sexton and Carbery or whoever it might be on the pitch to vary that, like you mentioned about the 10 running the game, but to ultimately vary that?
Well, I think there's probably still scope for that to happen. For example, you know, Joey can play fullback, and if you look at Mounga and Barrett, what's happening is Barrett is they're bringing the game into the midfield, which is really smart to work off. So if even on this here, if we look at the ball is in midfield, what happens is if you've got currently if you're attacking from one side of the field, if your ruck is over here and you've got a glut of players here and your attack is out here, as soon as the ball runs from here, you've 13 people coming at you in a rush defence. It's very hard to manage and play against that. What New Zealand are trying to do is they're trying to bring the ball into midfield, which breaks up these rush defences. It means they can't get as organised. So suddenly you're never going to attack a line of 13 men. You're going to attack a line of 3 and 4 at a time. And what they're doing is Barrett is taking it on one side as a first receiver and Mounga on the other. So that immediately puts doubt into this defence. It's very hard for 4 people to rush as fast and commit to being as fast in defence because they're far more vulnerable.
But Ireland can't do that. So Sexton stands here, the opposition know.
At the moment, yeah. So, for example, if we haven't missed, you're saying, have we missed a trick? We haven't done it before, but I don't think it's outlandish to think we could do it in a World Cup. For example, Carbery to play fullback if fit, and have Sexton on one side and Carbery on the other. Both kind of players who can make decisions, I suppose, for attack. Probably more so Joey in terms of off the cuff type of work, but it's certainly a better way to attack than running against the rush defence from the extremities. Certainly that didn't work in the last Six Nations for us at all. So the All Blacks are usually innovators and are ahead of most people, and but England are doing it too. So yeah, it's definitely an option I think we should look at, a la Shane Horgan. I don't think we will.
It doesn't matter actually, say, the difference between Barrett and Farrell is obviously one's a 12, one's a 15 with the numbers on their back. Yeah. Is that just completely numbers on the back, or is there actually a practical difference there?
In terms of
this breakdown, in terms of this precise tactic, doesn't matter if Carbery's a 12, doesn't matter if he's a 15. Can we still execute this regardless?
I think probably the terminology people are using more and more is that person here is called the first receiver, as opposed to the 10, 15 or 12. So, with Farrell, with Ford in England, with Mounga and Barrett, the Aussies did it before with Foley and Curtly Beale, and lots of. Essentially, you got your playmaker and your ball player either side of the ruck as the first receiver, having gone into midfield. Ireland at the moment, it seems all roads run through Johnny at the moment as that first receiver. On this side, we don't, unless Carbery's on the field, we don't have an obvious playmaking option there. Maybe Keith Earls, potentially someone coming in with a bit of experience from wide. Dennis Hickey did it towards the tail end of his career a lot, played at first receiver off rucks for Ireland. So we don't have a clear standout option unless we were to select Carbery in the side with Johnny.
Does this worry you a little bit at all?
I think it does because the fulcrum of our game running through Johnny is something that is it was found out quite a lot in the Six Nations, and it makes us predictable. I think that Joe Schmidt and the management team would counter-argue that, look, we didn't win collisions, which slowed our ball down, which made us more predictable again. And if we were to actually go out and win the collisions and get fast ball, we cease to be so predictable because we're playing on the front foot. It's a 6 of one, half dozen of the other. To me, I'd much rather see more variation in our attack, more creativity in our attack, and less of a focus around one man or Johnny being a fulcrum and responsible for every single aspect of our play. That does concern me. It doesn't mean he can't do it, and he's done it multiple times on his day, but I just think it's very kind of responsibility heavy on him, you know.
Because you were on with us after the Champions Cup final earlier on this year, saying that Irish rugby needs to really reconsider the whole box kicking game as well. I know it's a separate point here, but it's something that's been discussed obviously in the aftermath of the Italy game. Does that give you encouragement at all that Schmidt is rethinking this in terms of being so reliant on the box kicking game?
Well, no, the thing that one of the tactics that alarmed me in the Italian game was we abandoned the box kick for the crossfield kick deep in our own territory. So, and it was clearly a policy because we did it 3 or 4 times in the first 20 minutes. Gordon Darcy spoke about it in the Irish Times article, and it didn't really make a whole lot of sense, no matter what angle you look on it. I mean, if you are prepared to give the ball away in your own 22, at best a 50-50 aerial battle to win it back 5 metres further down the field, albeit across the other side, it's just a strange tactic. I can't quite reason it in any kind of logical sense why we do it. We've replaced the box kick in the Italian game with arguably a more risky surrender of possession 5 yards further down the field on the other side with a 50-50 chance of getting the ball back.
There must be some logic behind it.
Yeah, I can't. There must be. Well, maybe there's a subtlety we're all missing. But for me, you're better off trying to either keep the ball in hand and attack from deep, because the opposition defence, there's far more space in behind them. Their fullbacks and wingers will drop deep, and you know, if you want to give the ball away by kicking, would you not give it away 60 metres down the field and trust your defence to run up and have a clean run of things? I suppose you could counter-argue the likes of kicking to Bowden Barrett is a risk, but you know. Yeah,
or backing your own players, I suppose, that they're more than likely going to win whatever the percentage is.
Well, it's a pretty high backing to back, you know, Keith Earls to go up against, you know, a 6'5" international winger. Now I know Earls, he's not playing tomorrow, but you know, a crossfield kick to Joe Cockanasinga at 6'5", it's a strong backing of our players to win that ball in the air 5 metres further down the fild. So
can I take you back to something?
I'm clearly not a fan of it.
We're getting there.
Yeah. In case there was any grey area there.
Widens the doubt. Yeah. We might go back to the tactics board, if you will, but I want to take you back to something you just mentioned there about the predictability of Ireland. It was something that Stuart Barnes spoke about when he was on with us during the week, and all too predictable was what he was talking about. He was talking about getting ring rows more involved, and Brian Driscoll talked about it as well. He was saying, from what he has heard from within the camp, phase play has got a lot more focus. And I assume there's more to that. But will you take that point up, because you're obviously in the same camp of feeling we're a little bit too predictable, and how we might, why that is, and how we might change that over the next very short period of time?
Well, yeah, I would echo Stewie Barnes. Like, we are predictable. We have been. I think the whole issue about predictability is that we go to ground early on in most of, so from a set piece, from a scrum or line out, we invariably use that platform to set up a ruck. And to me, that's called a breakdown in rugby. To me, a breakdown is not something to be celebrated. It's like if your car breaks down, I don't celebrate it. You know, and how many times does my car break down? It doesn't. That's mean
not
it's
the
a
Joe Schmidt
car
outlook, though. He doesn't want to offload. He wants to keep the ball as much as possibly can, hit the ground, break down, whatever it is.
It's very safe to hit the ground and recycle possession. But it's also, that's about the height of it. It's safe and you hold on to possession. But actually, I think there's a the overall trends in the game in the last year would suggest the top teams don't want to have possession all that much. They'd rather defend, and then pick you off when you're tired from running into the brick walls repeatedly. So I'd be concerned that when you hear a comment, even from Brian saying, look, phase play has got a lot more focused, that it's slightly missing the point. It's like, I'd rather see set piece play get it more focused, that we can break the gain line and have less phase play. Like, if we reduce our phase play, we're going to be more dangerous. Not that we're going to have the same amount of phase play and we're working on making that more threatening. Actually reduce the amount of phase play. And that, to me, that's quite a philosophical shift or a fundamental change in how we play that I don't anticipate it's going to actually happen. Certainly not in the next few weeks.
Rugby versus let's play something a bit more risky.
Yeah. Now, pragmatic rugby won us a Grand Slam, you know, and we beat the All Blacks playing the same way at a very, very high level of execution, but it's physically very demanding and tiring. And once teams looked at us and analysed our games from 2018, which they probably would have done in 2 or 3 working days, given the level of video analysis and the amount of staff these top teams have, they were able to figure out how we play and put in a plan to stop it. Unfortunately, we just haven't done anything different. We've maintained playing that in a bid to do it better again. So that is a worry, yeah. So I don't know if that answers your question, but where you say Brian is hearing that, you know, phase play has been really well focused on to be more creative in training. I think that's a positive, but I'd actually rather see a reduction in phase play.
Is there any sense that, like, what we've seen over the last number of months is like Joe Schmidt shifting the Trojan horse up to the gate and saying, listen,
I hope so.
Don't worry about that stuff.
Yeah.
Like, because obviously the major concern would be that actually we are in the shit, and that stuff we've seen is actually Ireland, and anything that's been worked on now is tweaking little bits around and just trying to get players fit, that there isn't actually something of greater significance that's coming in terms of a change of philosophy or even a tweak in the style of play, that actually we're going to try and win the World Cup the way that we beat the All Blacks and the way that we won the Grand Slam, which would seem to not be able to now cut it.
Well, if we look at the physical profile of teams, teams are evolving at an alarming rate in the last year. If you look at the Australians, how much they've improved, the South Africans under Erasmus, England under Jones, and Wales. That's not to mention the All Blacks. But the one common thread I see is that they're physically huge, all of them, and they're bigger than us physically. So I would love if the Trojan horse was, we're going to take on the bigger physical teams than us by pretending we're going to be physical and match them, but actually we're going to use the ball and be creative and skillful and elusive, because I think that's what we ought to do given the profile of our team. But I'm not sure. I don't think it's a Trojan horse. I think Joe is pretty... he's a strong believer in what he's doing, and he's... You know, I'm sure he's belligerent in terms of how he wants it implemented, and he wants players to be doing it at the very best of their own level. But to me, it's very, very worrying to go into we have a giant Trojan horse and we're fooling everyone, and actually we're going to change our game plan and catch everyone off guard. I would love that. I'd happily I would happily eat my hat to be a fool. I really would. But there's nothing to me that suggests we've got a grand master plan. I think Joe's renowned for pulling out, you know, or recycling older plays from that he might have used in 2011 and in one particular match, getting players to hold back, calling that, and the execution of it happens at the optimal time, and everyone goes back to genius mode, and like we've pulled a rabbit out of a hat. To me, I don't think that's a strong enough attacking ideology going into a World Cup to say, right, we're going to be dull, physical, maintain possession, and every once in a while we're going to recycle a move from 7 years ago that people have forgotten about.
There was a tweet off the Off the Ball account 5 days ago from Brian O'Driscoll and Ronald O'Gara last week saying, have Ireland missed a trick by not considering Simon Zebo for this World Cup? And then yesterday Simon Zebo replied to the tweet saying, does a bear ...
Yeah, it's a redundant argument. He's not going to the World Cup. It's never going to happen.
That would be one hell of a Trojan horse.
Yes.
Can I ask you a question? What point would that call have to be made?
I would have thought that,
As in, like, Carney goes down, Conway's out, Carbery's out, Henshaw's out. Like, how many steps back do we go get his number?
I would say probably about 9 more.
Right.
I just don't think it's going to happen. I think it's probably a battle of wills and a personality. For example, Joe Schmidt or his management team or his PR and media guys, I'm sure would be aware that tweet happened, and that alone, it's just not Joe Schmidt's style. He's not going to, wouldn't entertain it. So I would say he'd probably put Tig Furlong in there before Simon Zebo at the moment.
Jeez, you could be onto something.
Systems. Well, you know, Tig has incredible ability.
Yeah.
He has incredible ability. Maybe not. Maybe not a rugby fullback, but no. It's to me. There's a kind. It's kind of tinged with sadness that a guy like Zebo, probably playing the best rugby of his career, is not in the World Cup squad. But in keeping in terms of what Joe's philosophy is, he doesn't. I don't think he seeks out unpredictable, creative mavericks. And,
like
Simon is exactly that.
I think it's like bringing Diarmuid Connolly back in for the Dubs. Let's not rule it out just yet.
Yeah, and if Schmidt could deliver it as seamlessly as Jim Gavin threw it into a press conference without a flicker of an eyebrow.
Just drop it in.
Yeah.
And the team today is fullback Simon Zebo.
Yeah.
We've just seen up on the screen there Tommy Bowe's depth chart of fullback. He was on with us on the show yesterday morning, and he has Jacob Stockdale as a second choice fullback. He says it's Stockdale's favourite position.
Interesting. Yeah.
Who would be your second choice fullback?
Probably Joey Carbery, I would have to say, and maybe Jordan Larmour, third choice, and then Jacob Stockdale. I think Jacob could be a very good fullback coming into the line at pace, but for me, probably if you think back to that chip that was blocked down before he got the famous try against New Zealand, I think we do need a guy who can be pragmatic back at fullback. I'm not sure if Jacob has the game management skills yet to be a fullback. He certainly has the attacking flair, but
Has Henshaw gone from that conversation?
not in my own little head, but I think he's gone from the international consideration for now. I actually think, Henshaw played vast majority of his earlier rugby at fullback. He cut his teeth at fullback. He was fullback for the Connacht team that won the Pro, was it 12 or Pro 40, whatever it was then. And I think he's very capable of fullback. And we were awful against England, and he was very much highlighted as one of the key reasons we were awful. But he's a very capable footballer, and I would say would back himself and have the confidence to play any international fullback again. He probably, I'd say, has a great desire to do it, but I don't think he's going to be given the chance.
Okay. We've had one comment in here that I do not want an answer to. Paul Connolly on Facebook asking who's the one player that we can least afford to lose from the World squad with an injury at Twickenham tomorrow. Don't answer it because it's nothing sure, then we'll have to come back to it. So that's from Paul Connolly. We had a discussion a little earlier on, Andy, about, I don't know if you saw this, James Haskell is going to go to MMA.
I did, yes, yeah. I saw it. And what?
Fair play to him, he'll be brilliant.
Jesus, I think he must be a glutton for punishment. I can't see the benefit of anyone going to, not at his age. I mean, he's an impressive physical specimen, but geez, opting to get your head kicked in, having finished a rugby career. I wonder what his wife thinks.
Yeah.
It's out of the frying pan, into the fire.
Must be thrilled.
Yeah. I hope he's getting a hell of a lot of money for it.
I would assume he definitely is.
Yeah.
And plenty of attention as well.
Sure.
We were discussing earlier on about sort of who we would back to. Mine was in Irish context, Owen went a bit more international. One from rugby, one from soccer, one from GA. Players, I went for Stringer.
To go into MMA?
Yeah.
Stringer's a great call, yeah. Little nugget. Little nugget. Nasty.
See him being nasty.
Can you bite? Can you bite ankles in MMA?
He took Lomu down, so
we did, Jesus, and I don't know, I've seen some social media pictures that he posts of himself.
Yeah, he's buff.
He's in pretty impressive condition.
I went for John Walters and Paul Galvin as well. Owen went for Tanu Manga. Who else did you go
Cormac
for?
Costello and Eric Cantona. Cantona, a flying kick specialist.
Yeah, interesting. Jeez, you've caught me on trying to...
We've had I'll give a little bit of thinking time there.
Umaga on his own may not be the big man, I don't know.
David Obi O'Brien says Pádraig Maher, Roy Keane and Devon Toner. Devon Toner would not make a good MMA fighter.
Well, you couldn't get near him.
Who would you fancy in MMA? Peter Stringer versus Devon Toner?
Well, Devon Toner.
Well, I'm trying to think
fancy Stringer.
How's he going to choke him
Stringer's
out?
going to get him on the deck.
He's going to climb up his back, grab him, and
Get him down.
and choke him out.
Toner honestly wouldn't have he'd have no chance.
Well, he wouldn't be able to reach Toner if he just held him off from a distance.
Just get him on the deck and it's
Scrappy.
game over.
It's like an absurd WWE storyline, to be quite honest.
So yeah, we have plenty of more suggestions coming. Anybody top of your head? Con O'Callaghan and GA is another one.
Conor O'Callaghan, I think, would be he's kind of
He's very good.
ideal physique for it.
Yeah, plenty more. Shane Long.
Mick Lyons. Remember Mick Lyons?
Oof.
Mick the Bio Lyons.
Yeah.
He made me cry a lot in my early years watching Meath beating Dublin in Key, Leinster.
Any of that Meath team,
Any of that Meath team actually from back in the day.
Yeah.
What's going to happen tomorrow? Does it matter the result really?
No, I think we're going to lose tomorrow, which doesn't matter one iota. If we can lose respectably, within less than 10 points, and have a reasonable performance and no significant injury, I would take that all day long.
Okay. We will be talking to you much more over the next few weeks. Andy Dunne from Personal Health, Active Aging. Check it out. I'm sure if a quick Google is going to bring up the relevant website.
Personalhealth.ie.
Well, there you go. I don't even need to Google it. Thanks a million for coming in.
Cheers, Adrian.
And enjoy the game tomorrow.